Okay, I've got some new yarn for our next nifty little skill. You guys are totally becoming knitters because now you know how to cast on, you know how to do a knit stitch and a purl stitch, and now you're going to combine those two things to make a rib stitch, which I love and is basically all of the garments except maybe a scarf and even slipper socks you use but at the end. We'll start with a rib stitch because we're at the moment knitting from the bottom up our garments, so we generally start with the body piece and we always start with a nice ribbed hem. It's harder to see on the navy, and then when we make our sleeve we finish with a beautiful ribbed cuff, and then when we do collars we generally do a beautiful ribbed collar. So we're going to learn what's called a 1x1 rib because we're doing one knit, one purl. So our cast on, flip it over so that we've always got the yarn we're working with in the left hand and our bare needle in the right hand. Okay, and generally we need to have a even number cast on onto our needles. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Yay. All right, here we go. So we're going to start with a knit stitch. So for our knit stitch, okay, remember Marnie, you put your woolly wool over to the right side of you. Okay, and we've got our tail at the back and our yarn that's attached to our ball of wool at the front. And with a knit stitch, the yarn is kind of behind. So you don't have to have it behind, but that's the big thing about a 1x1 rib, is that you really, really, really want to pay attention to whether your yarn is at the front or the back, because that's a big part of doing a rib stitch. So we start with a knit. So remember, the knit goes in from the left and kind of behind, and the yarn's at the back, and we strangle and we reel them in and we throw them off a cliff. Now see, this is where ribbing you kind of have to pay attention to begin with. Especially our yarn's at the back. See this finger, it's holding on to the yarn and it's behind. To do a rib we have to bring them to the front because we're about to do a purl stitch, and purl stitches you got to have the yarn at the front. So here we go, our purl stitch. Coming in hot from the right with our stabby at the front. Our strangle goes from back to front, reel them in, throw them off a cliff. So now I've done one knit, one purl. So our next is a knit. Knit has to start from behind. So we do that, and then we go in from the left and through to the back, stabby stab. Yep. Strangle from behind, reel them in, throw them off a cliff. I don't know why it's a hymn, but okay, so I've just finished a knit, a purl and a knit, and you can see here that we're already creating that same pattern those V's and little pearly lumps that I showed you when we did straight knits or purls. So we've done one knit, one purl, one knit. So that's how you can always tell if you've lost and you're like, oh, what was the last one I did? You can look and you'll be like, is it kind of a flat V? I've just done a knit. Is my last one a little bumpy purl? Just done a purl. Is my last one a little flat knit? I've just done a knit. So we know that we're going to do a purl next, so we need to bring that yarn to the front. Okay, and then we come in hot from the right at the front. We go from behind for our purl, through and throw them off a cliff. And then we put the yarn to the back because we want to do a knit next. Knit, stab from the front to the back, left, from the front left to the back, strangle from behind, reel them in, throw them off a cliff. To the front for our purl. Purl, that's the biggest thing with a 1x1 rib, because you've nailed the knit, you've nailed the purl. It is literally remembering to put your yarn to the front or the back. So here I'm purling. Okay, then I'm putting behind. So it can take a bit more time to rib, just because you're having to think a little bit about that and you're having to actually do it. So if you can see this great little pattern we're forming, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. So that reminds me, purl next, bring it to the front and around And again, it's a little bit sticky on the first one just because you're working with the cast on and not a knit row or a purl row or anything, or a rib row. Okay, so I'll just finish this off because another part of the rib stitch is making sure that you're going to make the beautiful pattern by continuing the knit purl on the next side. So here we go, that was my last, and it's a purl. Oh, need more yarn. And yeah, working out the tension of this finger is just going to be a personal thing. As you go, you're going to get better at it. Okay, so here we are, my friends. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. V bumpy, V bumpy. And we've done one row of our rib stitch, but it's not really a rib stitch yet until we do a couple of rows, because what we're creating is a pattern here. So you've flipped it over and you've got the same on the other side, because remember, knits and purls are the opposite of each other. So you either just know that you knit purl again, or you can just see that's a knit. You're going to knit the knits and purl the purls. Knit the knits, purl the purls, knit the knits, purl the purls. That's the pattern. Or you just know that you always go knit, purl. But if you're stuck halfway through and you don't know what you've done, look to the one beneath and you're going to copy that pattern, because that's how we get the row. See, purls on top of purls and knits on top of knits, and they form this contrast. Okay, so where were we? We need to knit our knits, so we're going in, knit our knits, and then we bring it forward to purl the purl. Oop. Oop. If you do get a little bit of the yarn caught, it isn't the end of the world. It makes it a bit sticky. To the back to knit my knit, and to the front to purl my purl. I'll show you what happens if you don't do that, because that could be quite handy to know. Okay, so here we are. That's a knit, and if I keep my yarn at the front accidentally, if I don't move it to the back and I go to knit my knit, see, now I'm kind of wrapping around a few times and it's all a bit funky, and when I try and kind of reel them in, it's not really letting me. So that would give you a good signal that you can just reverse out of it and go, oh yeah, my yarn's at the front, got to put it at the back to knit my knit. And conversely, if you've just done a knit and you forget to bring it to the front for a purl, and you just go straight in for a purl, when you pull it, you can pull that off a bit easier, but it looks super funky. So it's got this extra bit of hair, and then when you try and go and put it back for the knit, you're like, oh, that looks super weird. So the great thing is, if you've done something wrong, you can just let it off the needle, pull your yarn back out, and see, you've got your lovely little stitch from beforehand, and you can thread it back on. See, there's a hole in the middle. No harm, no foul, and you can make up for where you went wrong last time by thinking, yep, that's my purl, got to put it at the front. Make sure it's at the front, and I'm going to do my purl, and knit. Okay, and you keep going to the end, knit the knit, bring it forward, kind of shuffle this over, purl the purls, knit the knit, purl the purls. Okay, almost there, sorry, bring it too close. Knit, purl your last purl, and hopefully after 2 rows we can see that little bit of the pattern. Last one is a purl. Okay, see, it's a bit funky at the end, but actually once you kind of zhuzh it out, turn it over, and you can kind of pull it a little bit tight. See, we're starting to get our pattern where we're purly purlies on top and knitty knitties, and we're starting to make a rib. So usually we do about 5 or 6 rows of this to start off a garment. Doesn't it look